Hey everyone! It's been a very long time since I've done an astrology preview report. This year has been crazy, as I'm sure it's been for everyone. But I wanted to do one for December, and I'm actually going to do two for December because there's so much happening in December. So I'll send out this one today or whenever this comes out, and then I'll send out the other one on the winter solstice. So the energy going on for December is this interesting mix of the end of one heavy chapter, but then maybe the beginning of a very different chapter that has its own version of anxiousness to it. So to start, this whole year has been very Capricorn focused. We've had Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn there all year, and all of Capricorn at its worst is just heaviness, hopelessness, melancholy, world on your shoulders, everything's too hard, everything's gonna come to a terrible end. That's sort of Capricorn at its worst. And the thing about astrology is that the majority of the free will that we have is based on personal choice. So the smaller the scale, the more the free will. The larger the scale, aka the collective, just like with anything, tends to average out around lowest common denominator. So, the best and the most beautiful versions of things are absolutely possible, but they're far more accessible for you individually versus the collective. So positives of Capricorn, of all this energy in Capricorn this whole year, has been massive push to reach your absolute most divine level. Push to your extreme so that you can accomplish things that you didn't even know you were capable of accomplishing. That's sort of Capricorn at its best. And many of us have seen that. Many of us have been pushed absolutely to our, what we thought was our breaking point, and then gone one past, and then now stand in this ground of, oh my God, I can't even believe that I managed that. That's absolutely amazing. The sense of accomplishment and the sense of worth that come from proving to yourself that you're bigger and stronger than you thought you were is phenomenal. And that's really what that whole intense moment that we've been in for this whole year has been about, and been very accessible on a personal level if you were conscious of it, if you were aiming for that. Of course, plenty of people didn't, which is totally fine. It's all part of the huge cosmic plan. It's not like there's a deadline to any of this. But many people, and then also the collective as a whole, found themselves more in the insecure of all of that Capricorn stellium energy, which for that, it's like I was saying before, things are too hard, things are just awful, nothing is going to work out, this melancholy, this hopelessness, this just defeated energy. And so one of the things that's happening in December is a lot of that is shifting. I'll go more into that in the winter solstice video that I'll do in a little bit here. But just kind of know that we are coming out of that. My student Mike did a fantastic article on the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction and how they match up with the COVID spikes. So if you're, if you're needing a little bit of a relief, or when is the craziness of that particular thing, this whole virus thing, ending, we are in the last peak of it. Jupiter and Pluto are leaving their conjunction. I'll leave a link to that article that he wrote somewhere in the link of this, so that you can watch it if you haven't, or read it if you haven't read it. It's a written article. But just for that, if you're still worried about that, or if that's still something that's dominating your consciousness, that aspect is on its way out. Just astrologically speaking, the things that are causing it aren't going to be connected anymore. But there will be different challenges coming. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Basically, that's sort of the huge big picture of what's happening in December is the end of the Capricorn energy, because Jupiter and Saturn will be going into Aquarius. and the beginning of the new thing that we'll be diving into all of next year, which is Saturn square Uranus, which is a big deal. But this moment of, I'm recording this on December 1st, this moment of the first 2 weeks of December kind of has its own journey that we're doing before we get into the biggies coming up around the winter solstice. And so that's kind of what this video is meant to be. So to go into that, I wanted to talk about the lunar eclipse that happened the very early morning of November 30th and late night of, it was basically 1:30 in the morning on the 30th. So that was the lunar eclipse. And then the solar eclipse that will be on December 14th, I do believe. Yeah. So real quick, just what are eclipses? Why are they useful? Can this help you? So to kind of give a broad strokes version of this. So following the moon is very powerful and very useful and very personal. So if you've seen any of my videos before, you've probably heard me rant about like how totally useless it is to read an astrology meme that's like, the moon is in this sign today, so therefore feel this. Because it doesn't work that way at all. It's completely based on your chart. So it's very, very useful to follow the moon. But for the most part, me telling you about the moon is in this sign and so that's what this means is completely irrelevant, because it's going to be completely based on your own chart. So like I've given, and I also wrote an article about that recently, so I'll link that in the post about how to actually learn what the moon means for you personally, not just what someone else told you it means. But all that to say, there are a few moons in the year that do affect us collectively, and these are called eclipses. So a lunar eclipse is a full moon that's connected to the nodes, and a solar eclipse is a new moon that's connected to one or the other of the nodes. And you can think about these as sort of like 6-month moon cycles. So whereas a 1 month has, new moon, 2 weeks later, full moon. Like there's kind of a cycle involved in that. For the eclipses, it's, a solar and lunar eclipse, which will happen within 2 weeks of each other in this moment in time. And then 6 months later, it'll happen again. And so like a solar eclipse of one will then become the lunar eclipse of the other. So there's like this 6-month hugeness to it. So you can really kind of see how, like, whenever things get really big, they naturally get less personal and they get more in tune with the collective. So the eclipses that we're dealing with right now are very cool and kind of just starting the beginning of this Gemini Sagittarius moment. And so the nodes have been in Gemini, the North node's been in Gemini, the South node's been in Sagittarius for a while now. It's not totally new. And we even had an eclipse in that same duality back in June or July of 2020. But this moment is the first one where they're together. So we are completely out of the Cancer Capricorn cycle. We are totally in the Gemini Sagittarius cycle. And so the lunar eclipse that happened on the 30th was a form of completion of Gemini. And then the solar eclipse that's coming up on December 14th will be an initiation of a Sagittarius cycle. So first off, just this lunar eclipse that happened a couple days ago on November 30th, 2020, in case you're watching this video at some other time and date. Lunar eclipses always are just a moment of recognition, a moment of completion. So something that's been bubbling up emotionally, because it's still the moon, that, you hadn't dealt with, or so in a negative way, you didn't deal with it, and now it's up. Very much wanting to be dealt with. That's sort of the shadow side. I mean, it's still kind of a positive thing just to have that release, but this very much up and out of something that was emotionally repressed. But the wonderful side about a lunar eclipse is that it's the moment when you've been doing a lot of emotional work and you see results. Or you've been doing a lot of something that was, healing or completing, And then, that part of you is done. That part of you is complete. That part can finally be put to rest because there isn't any ties to it anymore. There's nothing unhealed left in it. So it's a recognition moment if you've been doing hard work and you're like, finally, I'm seen as this. I see myself as this. Other people see me as this. Yay. Or it's a, thank God, I'm finally done. Normally because you've integrated it, not just because you've decided to put a boundary around it or something. It's like completion means you're done. You're healed completely, not just that it's, pushed away. You're not pushing against it at all anymore. And so the thing that we were completing or pushing against or trying not to, or completing in the positive sense, pushing against and finally seeing it, and now starting to deal with it in the negative sense, whichever way you took it, was basically, where were we seeing ourselves as wiser than we were, maybe kind of puffed up a little bit, and now have just this openness. There's a curiosity, there's a playfulness, there's something that allows there to be more, almost like, the ego left. That's really this journey from South Node Sag, North Node Gemini, is you're unshackling yourself from, I have to know everything perfectly. I have to be the wise one. I have to have all of these experiences done beautifully. In a way, it's like you just kind of get over yourself. And so that's really what we're trying to do as a collective for this 1.5 year period of the North Node in Gemini, is we're learning how to be curious about others. And we're learning how to be curious about ourselves in a way that opens our sense of self instead of solidifying it. And for this particular lunar eclipse that we just experienced, the things that are helpful for that, because we're still in this energy. If you're watching this anytime within the first week of December 2020, you're still within this energy, so this is useful to you. The things that are helpful with that are really understanding where your power actually lies, because this whole energy, this whole eclipse energy is positively affected. It's trining one and it's sextiling the other of the nodes, Mars and Aries. So you're finding your power, but real power, your freedom. You're not, you're finding where you can unstick yourself and untrap yourself in the flow of the world events. So especially going with a lot of this Capricorn stuff ending, one way that this could maybe show up is you see where, listening to the news every day is making you feel heavy and helpless, Capricorn, and making you feel stuck and unsafe. So it's keeping you from feeling free. So maybe not watching the news would be a beautiful way to allow this energy to open up that lunar eclipse energy that's wanting to come through, which is curiosity and play and silliness and open-mindedness and just mental exploration. Who else is saying something? If all of this is coming from here, maybe find something totally different and just expand your mind in that way and see if, I wonder if that's any more true than this. So that's kind of the energy of the lunar eclipse that we just came from. This opening of the mind, doing it through finding ways to feel free and literally be free, that aren't coming from any sense of I'm right and you're wrong. We're leaving, because that's kind of the shadow side of Sagittarius. Really intense, I'm right and you're wrong. A kind of this egoism, which is funny because oftentimes Sagittarius is seen as its best qualities, which are also accurate, but there's negatives and positives to everything, every planet, every sign, every house, every aspect. There's not really a one way to do things with any of it, hence where the free will comes in. But like I was saying before, collectively, oftentimes we default to the not great because that's just sort of where the consciousness of the world is at the moment. Lunar eclipse. The goal of that was to help us complete something that in like the way that we would complete it is by opening our mind and letting go of our I was about to say authority, but the better way to think about that is just like your almightiness, your holier than thou-ness. That's what we're leaving behind for this whole year and a half time period that the North Node is in Gemini, and very specifically for that lunar eclipse in Gemini. Okay, so now moving on to the solar eclipse. So the solar eclipse coming up on December 14th, 2020 is all solar eclipses are very powerful, but this one in particular is interesting to say the least. So there's a really intense energy to it because, one, it's conjunct the South Node, so it's kind of going into that whole thing I was just talking about of we're trying to release the Sagittariusness, the negatives of the Sagittariusness. So how can we, lessen that holier than thou-ness? And basically, like with us, okay, let me start over here. Solar eclipses, what are they? Solar eclipses are new moons conjunct one or the other of the nodes. A solar eclipse conjunct the South Node, which is what the one on the 14th is, means that it's a super intense focus and potentially a new seed planted, a new awareness given to what we're letting go of, because it's the South Node. A solar eclipse on the North Node, which we won't have for another 6 months, would be a new seed planted or a new awareness happening for something that we're moving towards. So the fact that this is a South Node solar eclipse, then that means that we're being really aware of something that's wanting to be let go of. And we're being shown something new about it, because that's what a solar eclipse is. It's planting a new seed. So I like to think about solar eclipses as, it's almost like you're putting together a puzzle or something, and then the universe literally just drops an entirely new puzzle piece in your lap. And you're like, oh, I didn't even know this was part of the deal. And so then that becomes part of the thing that you're working with, this like new moment. So there's aha moments, there's awareness, there's insights. These are all the things that happen on solar eclipses. And so this particular solar eclipse is also very mental because it's conjunct Mercury. So there's kind of this like, one way that this could play out is you're seeing things that like you didn't know that you were doing that were keeping you from being open-minded. So, you really see, oh my God, I really did, kind of puff myself up in that way, and that's what's keeping me from being able to bond with those people. Or, wow, oh my God, I realized that I'm totally not following my intuition at all, and I'm doing it more from a heady space versus this way that would allow me to flow more. And, I'm trapping myself in that way because I'm not just following more of my intuition. Or, more classic things like you're religiously really stuck in a particular box, and so you're opening up your mind with that. Or you're really stuck to like one particular belief system, whether that's a political belief system or a philosophical or, spiritual belief system. And you're like, oh wow, something else is coming through. I'm seeing the limitations of my old box. So ideally, that's really what this solar eclipse has to offer. And if you're just looking at your own life, there's a huge potential that you'll be able to do that. So like really sit with, where do you have your blinders on still? Where do you think that you are right and other people are wrong? Really open that up and kind of see where that's going with you. What comes up around December 14th, really anytime mid-December, and allow yourself to be more humbled by it. Because, that's kind of the interesting thing. A lot of times we think, okay, if I really know who I am and I'm really solid on where I stand, then I have worth, then I'm confident, then I'm, like this powerful being. But this whole year and a half of the North Node in Gemini, what we're doing is we're realizing that our true strength lies in openness, not in certainty. And so one of the ways that this shows up is is that kind of all the things that I just said, of like really seeing it as more, there's always more to learn, because Gemini is the endlessly curious, endlessly expansive, not even really wanting to learn things for the purpose of categorizing them or claiming them, just for the pure joy of learning them, of just being, eyes wide open in the world. So, one of the things that's kind of a good thing to think about with this is, and this is maybe a bit of a side tangent, but the whole thing, like, you can think about it as this really intense Sagittarius energy is like the worst possible version of it would be someone who's just, totally like almost narcissistic in their beliefs. It's like, I am 1,000% right and you are 1,000% wrong. And normally we see those types of people as too egotistical, like too full of themselves. But what it really is someone is very unstable if they are in that particular mindset, and they're desperately grasping onto a belief because that's their life raft. That's their thing that they like, this has to be true, otherwise my whole life doesn't mean anything. They've shrunk their whole life to just be this one tiny little belief, this one system, this one religion, this one way of being, this one political party, this like tiny little tiny part of life. And so to really be able to do that, if you are falling into this camp yourself, if you know people, is to help them see that the true strength lies in the preference. So instead of it being like, I have to have this or else everything's bad, it's the preference. That would be nice. I love that. But I could probably find something else that's equally good if I just go out looking. If I open my eyes, if I ask around, if I see what other people are into, if I get curious about life. This is this or something better, basically, sort of the way to sum that up. And so the solar eclipse on December 14th is going to help us do that. And we all have something in us that we're completely full of ourselves about. It's human nature. Everyone's got something where, my belief is right, and if you think something else, you're ridiculous. You're totally wrong. You're evil. You're terrible. This is the thing being asked of us to look into and undo. So I'm really excited about this particular solar eclipse. I think it's going to be really, really, really powerful. All of December is powerful, but there's something big happening around that moment in time. And that solar eclipse, just like the lunar one on November 30th, is also trining Mars. And so it's like we've got to, and Mars in Aries is all about, how can I be more independent? How can I be truly free? How can I not in any way need to, have my life revolve around another person, as in like required, not by choice, completely freeing yourself from any sort of power dynamic that involves this has to happen and then I have to do it back. Mars in Aries is, don't tell me what to do. At its best, it's total freedom. At its worst, it's just rebelliousness. Everything has good and bad. But the best version of this, and you can take this as, you individual watching this video, here is the best way to handle this solar eclipse, is find that freedom that allows you to really, truly stand on your own 2 feet, and see that freedom comes from not holding a belief super tight. You're releasing your death grip on any particular belief, and you're opening up and you're being more curious, and that is actually where your power is, your true power and your true freedom. And you're particularly doing this with your thoughts, because Mercury is conjunct this solar eclipse on December 14th. So those are the biggies for the eclipses coming up this week and in a couple of weeks from now, or maybe years ago, depending on when you're watching this video. But I wanted to share that with you to help you navigate this time a little bit easier. And then also, I'm going to be doing a video on the whole everything happening on the winter solstice, because there's so much happening on the winter solstice. So that's going to be a whole separate video that I'll dive into next time. Okay, thanks so much. And quick little reminder, if anyone is interested in connecting with me about the Astrology School coming up, I host it once a year. There's a limited amount of students available. It's an intense 7-month program where you meet with me at least once a week and you learn everything you need to know to deeply, deeply, deeply master astrology, to the point that if you wanted to, you could take it and make a profession out of it. That's sort of the wonderful goal of it. But there's many people that go through the school just for their own personal evolvement, because that's really why astrology is so powerful, is it allows you to have a map of really seeing who you are, why you're here, and how to make the best of it. So the deadline for that is December 21st. If you're interested, I'll leave a link to that as well down in the notes below. And I think that's it. So, okay, thanks so much. Talk to you soon.